Alice, take it away.
Okay. I did want to mention that the press will come, since it's not an election issue. Unfortunately, I should have reminded the Missourian to come today, because they said they would come if it's not just Democrats talking, and Kathy's already elected, so but we'll work on that for next time. Anyway, we're really happy that Kathy is, we're going to meet Kathy today and get a chance to know her better and her background. And we're really excited for your election, Kathy. Our newly elected 45th state legislator, Kathy Steinhoff. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I really am honored to be a guest with you all. Many of you I have already met. Some of you I've met at the door, which was very exciting conversations to have. To give you a little bit of my background, I've been a teacher in Columbia Public Schools for 34 years. I teach math. I guess I should say I taught math. I just recently retired in May, so it still feels strange not to say that I'm a teacher. I started at West Junior. I was hired by Dr. Muriel Battle. And then the next year I moved to Jefferson Junior High School, where I taught for about 24 years. I always thought of that as my home. Some of my very best friends I met there. I met my husband there. It was really a great family place. And then when the freshmen moved to the high schools, which was when Battle High School opened, I just hopped on the bus with the freshmen pretty much. I decided to teach at Hickman High School for my last 9 years. So I retired from Hickman High School. And, I don't even know if this is worth saying. I have not put this on any of my campaign literature, but, you're a close, intimate group here. So I hate it because it sounds like I'm bragging, but I just am trying to say that I was a established teacher in our district. I believe that I earned a lot of respect from my peers. I was nominated for awards at every school that I ever taught at. I was on leadership teams at every school that I've been at. I did receive the National Teacher of the Year from NEA in 2011. Thank you. And I say that because of the next thing I'm about to say. I was very involved with my union. I was a leader in that union for probably about 20 years, including 6 years as president and 9 years on the negotiation team. And even when I didn't hold those roles, I was strongly involved in the leadership. So the reason that I talk about those awards is that I think my success as a union leader came from the fact that my peers respected me because they knew I worked really hard. And I took my profession with such pride and such seriousness and devoted so much time to that. I equally did the same thing with my union job. And I believe that the career that I'm entering into now, I do think the things that as a teacher, the skill set that I have as a teacher, I think is going to be invaluable. I've had some kids say some pretty ugly things to my face. And so I'm used to being able to kind of hold my tongue and understand that often those words come from a place which might not have anything to do with me. And so I think I'm going to probably be facing that a lot in my new role. So I already have that kind of experience. But I also think my union role has prepared me well for this job ahead. I never expected to be involved in my union. I joined my very first year. I didn't really know much about it other than I got a great magazine until one day a colleague said, you ought to go to one of those union meetings. I think you'd really like it. And I went to one and I just got hooked. I would say my first 12 years of teaching, I've been to tons of meetings, but I had never been to a meeting where we were talking about the teachers and their livelihoods and the challenges that they have. Every other meeting I'd been before that had been talking about curriculum and instruction, which was great and helped make me a better teacher. But by going to those union meetings, I understood even back then that our profession was kind of under attack. It was a little, it wasn't as open of an attack as it is these days. I think back then it was more of attack of never increasing the funding because they love what they do. They don't need to be paid more because they love what they do. And just really diminishing our power as a profession and getting more people to come into it. And then as I got more involved with my union, at every stage of the way, I thought, well, I can't do that next step. Like I can't be on the executive team. Those people, how are they able to present themselves? How are they able to talk to the press? And then, when I got on the negotiation team, I remember thinking, oh, I can't do that. But every step of the way, when I took a little bit of a risk, my skill set just kept growing and growing and growing. And so I did not look to think that I would be in politics someday. But back in January, some people that mean a lot to me pulled me aside and said that they thought that this would be something good for me to pursue. And I was immediately thinking, no, that's not for me. I remember that one of the people said, the ideal thing for you to do is, this was like on a Wednesday night, the ideal thing for you to do is to declare on Friday that you're running. And I said, I'm getting tests in class tomorrow, and I'm going to be grading them the day after that. I don't have time in my schedule to make this decision. But anyway, the more I got into it, the more I started talking to people, the more I started to realize that a lot of the things that prevent other people from running, I had kind of already conquered along the way. And that when it came down to it, I would not be able to complain anymore if I didn't run. Because here I had so many opportunities. I had people supporting me. I was getting ready to retire. There was an opening. Everything pointed to this being something that I could do. And it's not fair to expect everybody else to do it. So that's when I kind of jumped into this. And then from there, you guys, you saw what happened. I ended up running unopposed, which was a lovely gift. I think that everybody should go into politics that way because it was an easy way to get on the campaign trail. But even though I ran unopposed, there were different people that I met. Obviously, there's people that don't know much about politics. They don't really want to be involved with it. They might vote if they have time. Then there's another group that they're pretty engaged in what's happening. They vote. They kind of know who they're voting for. But I don't think they understand how much they are in control of who could be running. And then there's people like you all that I kind of feel like are the watchdogs of our democracy locally here. And even though you all didn't necessarily all have a meeting and vote for me, at least I don't know that you did, but I feel like the fact that I ran unopposed, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it was because you were okay with me running. You all run in the circles that if you didn't like me as a candidate, you could have found somebody to run against me. My district is 73% Democrat. So any race I was going to have was going to be in the primary. So I really didn't expect a Republican to run just because I imagine the Republican Party would have told them that we're not going to spend money on you. But I was kind of expecting that there would be a Democratic opponent in a district that's so civically engaged and so democratic. So whether it's true or not, I want to thank you for that support. It means a lot to me. It gives me a lot of confidence and courage going into this seat. And I also want to convey some thanks because yesterday we were at our freshman training and I was sitting next to Kemp Strickler, who's out of Lee Summit. And I mentioned I was going to be speaking to you all today. And he said, will you please convey thanks to them? Because you all must have made a donation to his campaign. And he ended up winning by, I think it was 47 votes. And he truly believed, I mean, he's a very sincere, great guy. He truly believed it was donations like yours that could have made the difference for that 47 votes. He said one more mailer that I was able to purchase, maybe one sticker influenced that, maybe one bottle of water that helped a volunteer knock on 5 more doors, that he believes that made a difference. And he's very grateful for that. And I'm grateful for you supporting him because he will be great in the Missouri legislature. Anything that I want to get done, having more Democrats down there it's going to be more helpful. And now because of you all, he has another tie to Boone County that he is appreciative of. Now, I know I've just talked. I would imagine I may have missed some things that you wanted to hear about. So hopefully I could just answer some questions that you have.
Kathy, first of all, I want to throw out, I don't have a question right now, but I think your story and you're telling that is so inspiring about encouraging other people to vote. We should, to run for whatever. I think we should have you back to speak just before we have to elect officers next year. It's like time to step up. Yeah, you've got this. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Pam?
I'll ask a question. Oh, sorry.
I know that
I was wondering, what's the biggest
Go ahead,
Oh,
Keith, you
hand.
can finish.
I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't
okay.
raise my hand. I apologize. I just want to know from your orientation yesterday, what was kind of the biggest surprise and maybe some encouragement where you didn't think there was going to be encouragement to be found?
Well, I'm going to answer that with two things. First of all, I know this sounds silly, but I don't think I realized till this week what a big deal it is to be a representative. The staff down there were so kind and so wonderful. Everybody that presented to us started off by congratulating us and saying what an honor it is to serve as a representative, and that they, were so appreciative that we put ourselves out there. And that was awesome. I would say the thing that was most surprising to me, and I tend to be a little bit of a Pollyanna, so I hope this doesn't wear off, but the relationships that I've already started with a lot of the Republicans there were really wonderful. I mean, they were so kind, even though we had not a lot of conversations about issues. We had a little bit about issues, but I hope that these relationships will survive what we have been seeing happening in Jeff City. And I know that several of them, I had that exact conversation with. I don't think it's going to happen, but I was trying to secretly push this idea that how about as a freshman group, we agree to a code of conduct where we would not be personal. And almost every Republican that I mentioned that idea was supportive of it. I was kind of hoping one of them would take it up because I felt like it would carry a little more weight with them, but that's the part I would say I was optimistic about. Pam, did you want to go next?
I did. What committees will you be on? Or which ones have you asked to be on? And have you pre-filed any?
Yeah, bills. Okay, thank you, Pam. The way the committees work, at least on the Democratic side, because that's another thing that I'm learning more about, is that the way the Democratic caucus handles things like office assignments and parking spaces and committees is different than the Republicans. So it was interesting that when we would talk to people, somebody would say, I haven't had my office yet. And then the Democrats would say, really? We already knew where our office was. And then, something the Republicans would know about that we didn't know about. So the Democrats sent out a form, like a Google form, where we could request 7 committees in order of priority. So I will tell you, I put budget at the top and I put education second. I doubt the education surprises any of you. Mm-hmm. If you know me well, budget wouldn't surprise you because I was a math teacher, first of all. And some of you may have seen that I was at every school board meeting probably for the last 15 years. And I also spoke for 6 years at every school board meeting as the president of CMNEA. And I would say at least every third or fourth time I had something to say about the budget. I really dove into that budget. And it's one of the things that worries me a little bit is that I don't know of many community members out there right now that are keeping as close an eye on the CPS budget. I know there were people that came before me, and I know I looked at it pretty close for many years, and I'm not sure that that's out there right now, but I'm kind of getting off in the weeds. So that's why I requested budget. And I will also tell you that the 4 Democratic representatives from Boone County, we went to dinner together and had a long conversation about which committees we felt like needed to have a Boone County presence. And we kind of divided up those in our choices of 7 so that hopefully we would be, as a group, good representatives of Boone County. And Pam, your second question was about, have I pre-filed a bill? I have not. I know that there are a lot of people jumping out there and filing bills. I kind of have a different mindset right now. And I know some people have told me it's the wrong mindset, but part of me thinks that, well, I shouldn't even say part of me, much of the data that we saw at our presentations, the chances of me as a freshman Democrat getting anything passed is very low. And a lot of the issues that I would like to conquer are big ones. Like, I want to improve public education. This is not just a bill where I can say change one word in statute. That it's not something like that. So I would also like to see us preserve workers' rights, unions' rights. Gun violence is a big thing to me. So a lot of the things that I'm really passionate about are big things. So until I can really get in there and take a look at the budget, until I can start trying to find some common ground with Republicans, for me, I did not want to start by pre-filing a bill before I kind of saw how things went.
I just want to make a comment. Something that David Tyson Smith told us when he went down there was that Republicans did listen to him. And
Good.
I was impressed by that. And it must be, of course, his demeanor. And I think as a teacher, they will listen to you on those subjects.
Well, thank you, Pam. I hope you're right. David, did you have a question?
Yes, you were asking for more salaries for teachers, and I'm sure that since you're representing the University of Missouri, you'll be interested in more money for the university. But this is a state which is continually emphasized low taxes, and especially with Republicans in control, they've been trying to lower the taxes and thus the revenue. We have a surplus right now because of the federal money coming in, but not the state money. That's going to be a terribly difficult problem. How can you be effective there, and what are you thinking of? And are there any of those federal funds that could be directed in the way of education?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I share your concern that as we try to increase salaries for teachers, both, like you said, at the college level and then also pre-K-12 level, and not just teachers, I feel like workers, even our state workers, all the people that spoke to us this last week, I don't need to tell you all this, the rich are getting richer, and then the working class is just kind of sitting there stagnant. And we're starting to celebrate raises that don't even keep up with inflation because we're just so happy to get a little bit of something. And this is all happening at a time where, yeah, we've seen some changes like the tax cuts that were just introduced. We know that they're going to have long-term negative effects. We do have a big surplus in the budget right now. So but in order to increase salaries, it's got to be a stable source of revenue. So some of the things that I will be looking at is those sources of revenue. Is there another revenue stream? Because increasing salaries can't come from that surplus, even though there's a lot of money there. It probably wouldn't be a wise move because we don't want to get our state in trouble years down the road. To your question about how could I maybe impact that, if I can get on that budget committee, I think it could help. Because in order to find money, you have to find money. And that means being able to dig in and look at those things. And you said something else that, I know what it was. Deb Lavender, I don't know if you all know her. She was a representative years ago, and she just got reelected but she got elected in a different district. Well, Deb had historically been on the budget committee, and Deb knows her stuff. She went to our freshman orientation this last week. So I spent a lot of time talking to Deb, and she was sharing her opinions about that money. And I remember one conversation, we were even with a Republican who's in office right now, who was so complimentary of Deb. So the three of us were sitting around talking, and he was on the budget committee, and he said how Deb always asked the best questions. He learned more from her on that committee than anybody else on the committee. So I think trying to be like a Deb on the budget could help, making alliances with Republicans, staying on top of it, asking good questions, and then just searching for those sources where we can help make Missourians' lives better is the approach that I'll take. And I hope that answers your question, David.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Al, did you have a question?
Okay. I'm technologically challenged. I finally found the right button. Congratulations, Kathy, on your election. And I think you were right from the perspective of saying that it's a big deal to be in Jefferson City in the General Assembly. But I would strongly urge you not to lose your humility. I was working with members of the General Assembly when Republicans and Democrats did talk with each other. In fact, we were able to get two major pieces of civil rights legislation through the House, Senate, and passed Judge or former Governor John Ashcroft's signature, surprisingly enough. What I would like to ask, though, when you look at the budget, for example, for educators, my wife was an educator, and I strongly believe that there are two main problems in recruiting new good educators, one of which has to do with salaries. If you don't pay someone a decent wage, they will look other places for employment and career opportunities. The other, I think, is class size. It's difficult for even the better educators to deal with a class of 40 or 50 students and try to maintain control over everything there. What I would ask of you is, given your background and experience, is that maybe you look for ways to be the training vehicle for those folks that might say kind of want to push forward with the new educational options out there, which I think are detrimental. Charter schools being one of those. So I would ask for you to look for places where you can be the person that provides the information, the expertise to those people who are totally unaware and think that, well, educators only work for about 8 or 9 months out of a year and you don't have anything else to do. But we know that educators have a lot of other responsibilities that they must maintain.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I appreciate that, the question. I had that same philosophy that you're talking about, that I'm down there as an expert, so to speak, in a teacher's life. And that we know that in the last couple of years, at least I know from noticing, things would be said on the floor, things would be said in the paper that just didn't make sense. But if you weren't a teacher, you didn't know. And one example of that, because I agree with what you said about class sizes, but one example of that is last year when there was some efforts, really led by Governor Parsons, to increase the base salary in Missouri. The way that they went about doing that, in my opinion, was kind of a joke. They wanted to be able to claim, look at what we did. We gave teachers a raise. No, they probably gave 300 teachers in the whole state a raise. They don't, other people don't understand that there's this whole salary schedule, and they weren't talking about adding to a base that then fed everybody having an increase. They were talking about taking those entry-level teachers and bumping them up. And in some school districts, that might have been a $5,000 bump, which means that the teacher teaching next door to them with 10 years of experience was now making $20 more than that beginning teacher. And so talk about affecting retention. I mean, that just ticks people off. It doesn't matter what career you're in, right? So the idea of, and then also the fact that they were only offering it as, they were going to use, I think it's like 70% state dollars. The district had to put up 30%. It was only going to last 3 years. So when you got into all of those details, that was a very different headline than, oh, look, we've raised teacher salaries, because that is not at all what happened. And so I will definitely speak out on things like that, but also the other issues that you're talking about with class size. The other thing that I ask of you all, because you mentioned at the beginning of trying not to lose my humility in this, is that I am your representative. I know that not everybody in the room here lives in the 45th district, but I truly believe 45th district might be where I got elected from, but I'm representing Boone County, and that is very close and dear to my heart. And I'm representing the entire state of Missouri. You know, we're not called district representatives, we're state representatives. And so I want you all to stay in touch with me. I want you to hold me accountable. I want you to ask the questions. I hope you're finding from me that I am a very open person and willing to share discourse on whether I agree or disagree. Herb, did you have a question?
Yes, indeed. I applaud your interest in being on the budget committee. That is wonderful. I'm going to ask you a question about the budget because I'm sure you boned up.
I have
And
not.
this is easy
Go
because
ahead,
I
I'll try.
forgot- I'm not as much on top of this as I would like to be. Could you give me three numbers or close to it and there are several different ways of talking about the budget appropriation is basically what I'm talking about. How much do we budget this year for K through 12 education, post-secondary education, and corrections?
Well, I will tell you what, I don't know those answers, but I'm happy to look them up for you.
Okay, I
I
can look
have-
them up elsewhere.
Yeah, but I will tell you, as far as budget goes, I think you will recognize this is probably a smart move on my part. I was on the phone with Kip Kendrick this morning and
Yes.
begging him to have an ongoing relationship with me about understanding that budget. So we have a meeting in December where he's going to start giving me some guidance on how to do that. And I appreciate anything that he's going to tell me about that. I hope that the next time I come before you all, Herb, I'll know those answers off the top of my head.
Is it your impression as it is mine?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is it your impression, as it is my impression, that Missouri spends disproportionately on corrections as opposed to educational categories compared to the average state in the union?
Yes, that would be my impression. And the other concern that I want to find more about is over time, how that has changed.
Yeah.
Because I think in the terms of education, it was better funded, 30 years ago than it is being funded now. And so those are some things that I hope to have more data and figures on, but I agree with you. I
Thank you.
do. So I've got two Davids here. I don't know which. How about Mallory? Do you have a question?
A couple things. Yes, thanks, Kathy. Well, first of all, I just wanted to point out, you mentioned earlier that you had people tell you that your mindset was wrong. My answer to them would be they didn't run for office. I know you'd be way too humble for something like that, and I respect input from everyone. So, but yeah, when people tell you you're wrong, like, excuse me. Hopefully they said it more politely. But my question has to do with committees. That you said you put in a list of your top 7 choices. How many committees? Will you just serve on one, or will you be serving on more than one?
That's a good question. And Alice also asked in the chat about who decides on the assignments.
Right.
It is the Democratic leadership that does make those decisions. But so that's Crystal Quaid. And she also couples that with many things that she told us about the other day, because she wants her committees to be diverse. She wants to make sure that somebody's not assigned to 2 committees that meet at the same time. So there's those practical things. She wants to make sure, like they're balanced by race and balanced by gender and balanced by different parts of the state. So all of that's going to go into it. She told us that if you get on, say, budget, you probably will, that might be your only committee, or you might have one other. But there might be other people who have 4 to 5 committees that just the committees don't meet that much and are not as intense. She gave the example, and I don't know if I'm going to remember what the committees were, that, oh shoot, I know I wouldn't. Just that some of them kind of hit hotspots, in the years about something that's big. And so one committee that 10 years ago might have taken lots and lots of time and met a lot, and it was a part of so many sources of legislation, may right now hardly ever meet. And then different committees that back then weren't that important are important right now. So I hope I answered your question. And I'm also hoping you're going to cut me off when you need to cut me off. I don't know how long I just answer questions, so I'll trust you all.
You've got plenty we got another half an hour or so, plenty
Okay.
of time here. Since we're doing this different with the announcements now at the end, I'll try to keep an eye on that, but we've got plenty of time now, so don't feel rushed at all. But thank you.
Oh, okay. And I noticed that Keith put something in the chat about that the freshman class discussed this. No, it wasn't really the freshman class discussing it, just to be clear. It was my attempt to try to get the freshman class to discuss it. And I don't know how far I got. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll surprise me on the bus tour and somebody will say, let's do a code of ethics, and I'll be like, yes, I did that in the background. Which I will also say, going back to that idea of not pre-filing, in my mentality about things, I will tell you all right now, my intent is to be working behind the scenes. You may not see my name on a lot of things, but I hope you will ask me, and I will tell you that I'm building relationships that are trying to chip away at some of this bad stuff that's coming our way, because I know it's going to be coming our way. So things like, I know that they've already talked about bringing up CRT and trans athletes, and yes, those things might pass, but I will consider it a success if I can pull something out of there that just makes it less bad. So that will be some of the work that I will be doing. David Robinson, did you have a?
Yes, you met me at my door.
Yes,
I
I
am your
recall.
constituent here on Stevens Lake. I'm thrilled that you're here today. I apologize that we did not bring you in during the campaign. You might understand that we were doing everything we could to get Adrian and Doug and others elected, and it was a hard season this year. So now it's just a great pleasure to talk to you. As I talked at my door, I want to talk about higher education. I've been statewide and to some extent national leadership of American Association of University Professors, and we consider ourselves as a sister union now with MNEA. So the first thing I'll say, as soon as I heard that it was you, immediate former chair of our local MEA for this coming out as a candidate, there was no need to look any further. You had a good reputation with your very powerful constituency there, so that's good enough for me. By the way, we recently affiliated with AFT, but I won't let that bother me.
No,
I want to know what I can do to help you, what we can do to help you with higher education issues, or how we can reach you on higher education issues. I won't tell what they are, except to say to everyone listening here what they already know. Higher education is very important to us here in Columbia, Boone County, and Missouri, and it's under threat, maybe worse than K through 12. I don't know how to say what's worse than the other. It's pretty bad. So shall I just email your office, or what, or how shall I establish this contact so that you can call on us and we can call on you in probably the near future?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say, please don't hesitate to let me know anytime something comes up. Either you see it come up in the legislature and you think I need to know about it, or it's coming up like at the University of Missouri and you're not sure that I know about it, because it's certainly not going to hurt my feelings to hear from you, even if I'm already educated on it, but chances are I'm not.
Oh, actually, I meet with their chapter, so I will know about that.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I've often shared the dais, even in hearings, with autophagians. So
Oh, good.
I'm very comfortable with your folks. And
Yeah, I like to get that information from a lot of different sources and perspectives, which I'm sure you understand what I'm saying there.
Right.
Matter of fact, I really met with a lot of student groups during my campaigning.
Yes,
You know, they were
yes.
excited to meet. I was on speaker circle several days, and that was really fun to meet the kids, because my district is 25% college students. It's the highest level in the whole state. That's a lot. But the other thing is, I don't have a contact with them. I couldn't get into dorms to knock doors. I couldn't get into the frat houses. I couldn't get into most of the student housing. So I felt like I was just kind of alienating a fourth of my constituents. And I really want, I hope you can tell, I really want to serve. I want to serve everybody that's there. And the only way I can do that is if I'm educated about the issues. But when you're talking about the university, it's more than just students.
Right.
Staff has may have a whole different opinion about what's going on.
Yeah.
And then you've got administration, which oddly enough, I have some things coming up in the next week to meet with some administrators at the university, but I kind of hadn't been able to break into that till now. And I will tell you that one of the first things that I hope to say to Munchoy there is, I am pro-university and I will support the university any way I can. However, they're a big employer in their community. And I also have many students as my constituents. And there will be times if I think they're getting it wrong, then I'm going to stand with constituents and I'm going to stand with staff. I have been at many protests at the university over the last several years, and I will continue to do that if the university is not playing nice with their students and their staff. That is one of the things that I intend to say. And like I said, I need to hear the information from all sides, because if, say, only the students come to me with something they're concerned about and I don't hear from the staff, and to your point, David, I hopefully will be reaching out to you, but it may be that I feel like I've already gotten a hold on that and I may not have. So please continue to talk to me. I'm fine with email, phone calls, visits. If it's a big issue, I'm happy to sit down and have coffee with you because I want to understand it. And there's a big learning curve here because, you think about the university as one thing, there's, 1,000 other issues that are going on around our state. So I may not know it quickly, but I do want to know it. And even though I said I did not plan to file a lot of bills, I definitely also, if you have an idea for a bill and I can really understand it, then I will try to get it filed. But I'll be honest with you, as a freshman, I will try to find a Republican to file it, is probably what I will do. Because again, I don't care that my name is on it. And I hope you all don't care that Boone County's name is not on it, if we can just get the job done. And there's a lot of bipartisan issues out there that I think that we could get done as long as we, are strategic about how we do it.
Well, thank you. I think I know what issues I want to address in my email to you then.
Good, that'd be
Heard
great.
that.
That'd be great. Sue, did you have something you wanted to ask?
You're muted, Sue.
I was just going to say the thing about not necessarily trying to work across the aisle was something we heard a lot from John Wright. And he felt that was the important thing, was to get the things done, however, worked well. I will say I started working in state government in 75, and I was there for over 30 years. When I started in 74, but I did a program for some friends in 75. And what struck me is the amount of budget for mental health was like 4 times corrections. Well, we know that once they close the long-time care facilities for mental health, a lot of those people ended up in prison because if they can't manage. But the other thing I would suggest you try to look at is how much private facilities and how much of the employees within prisons may be private companies rather than state employees, because I think they're tend to be more expensive that way. That may be the only way they can get them. But correction seems to be able to get whatever, at least that was my impression. They seem to be able to get whatever staff they wanted in a way that others couldn't. And you're considering looking at that.
Yes, I am definitely consider looking at it. And I will also add to what you're saying that and I'm sorry, my dog is barking in the background. But I'll also say that I'm concerned about when we do that sort of thing, how it's a for-profit industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then it just raises so many questions. I mean, the same thing I know from just my experience with Columbia Public Schools and going to an outside agency with substitutes and saying that they saved so much money, and they're not comparing. I mean, they're comparing apples and oranges, because when they say they saved money, they're not talking about the positions that were being added or the extra fees that are being put over there. If you really took all that money back and you tried to do it within our school system, I think we'd see a different product than what we see.
Right.
And so, yes, I'll be looking at that as well. And again, feel free to encourage me to do that some more if you aren't hearing much about it, or you see some research on it or anything that you want to share with me.
There's one other thing that I to look at and consider. When I started with state government, our bosses talked about the head of our agency, Department of, talked about there being 3 people that we service: the public, because we are spending their money, and because they apply for jobs. Second was other employees. We should be treating and I'm allowed They were only supporting management. If management wanted something, they tended to give it to it.
Yeah.
We also went to a computerized application. Unfortunately, what that meant, because nobody looked at the applications to see if people really had the they claimed to have.
Mhm.
So it meant the people that were really qualified often were not the top ones on the list because there were people that honestly didn't understand terminology. They had experience. But there were many who lied or falsified what experience they had. And they might get higher scores, the ones that were really qualified.
Mhm.
So what that application to me, that procedure is unfair to the really true candidates.
Yeah.
And I don't know if for sure it's that way now, but I expect it is. And I just wanted to let you know about that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I'll try to see if I can find some more information about that as well. That's a good point.
So I was going to call on Mari or Carl. I think they had their hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, it was me. While we're giving you our laundry list of hot issues, you really caught my ear when you said working behind the scenes and trying to mitigate bad legislation, because I think that's such an important function that the Democrats need to play, being in a super minority. I don't know how many people are aware of this. I hope more will be soon. 2023 is the 50th anniversary of the Sunshine Law. And it is under considerable attack from the Republican majority in the legislature. A bill almost got through, weakening it last time. And I know that that's going to be a target for them again this year. And I think I just bring it up because it's something that we so take for granted, that we have a right to know what our governmental entities are up to and who they're talking to. And there are still such cavalier violations, and it's evidenced by Halt, the latest ruling regarding Halt. But the penalties are not great, and a lot of folks may think it's just intruding upon their private business to have that information available to the public. So as that legislation comes up, I just would appreciate you paying attention to it and seeing what can be done to mitigate any damage that will be attempted.
Yeah, I'm thank you for bringing that to my attention. And I will go back to kind of what I said before. You know, my experiences are limited. I have never been sunshined. There's been a couple times I thought I would, and oddly enough, I wasn't. Just because things that went on in the school district that I had a little bit of knowledge about, and I just assumed that they were going to ask for my emails, but they never did. But I'm sure it's many of the positions that you all have held, you maybe have sunshined somebody before. You may have been like an employee that was sunshined, or you may have been an administrator of the Sunshine Law. So knowing any intricacies to that, kind of like how what you were stating, how there are some problems with it, but kind of knowing those details and the perspective of why it's not such a great statute to have in those details, that would be helpful to me. And I hope you all won't hesitate to let me know about that.
Yeah, the main concern is an initiative petition required that legislators be covered by the Sunshine Law. This was a few years ago, and ever since then they've been trying to tear it down.
Yeah.
So that's the crux of it.
And you're right, they've talked about that they are going to be looking at that initiative petition this year.
Yeah.
Kathy, just one comment. As an elected years ago, several years ago, the sunshine laws are superlative, and we have to do whatever is necessary to bulk them up. On the other hand, I have been the subject of weaponized sunshine laws, searching for all kinds of things in emails and so on. So those intricacies that you talk about are the kinds of things I think that you need to take a hard look at. But it is true that on balance, that certainly is a two-edged sword, but the sunshine laws have to be bulked up.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that we spent a lot of time this past week talking about sunshine laws, and one of the things that really surprised me, because like I said, I wasn't as experienced with them, is having the word's not deletion, but having a schedule where you don't keep your electronic records any longer. And how one of the attorneys recommended that we come up with a schedule for that within our office. And so many people said, so what do you recommend? And he said, there's no recommendation. And so somebody said, so 24 hours? Oh, I wouldn't do 24 hours. And then somebody said, what about 6 months? Well, that seems pretty good, but it wouldn't just give us a number for that. And I'm sure because it's legal advice that he didn't feel comfortable giving us, but I didn't realize that there wasn't some accepted practice that seems like statewide wouldn't be such a bad idea on those things.
Yeah, there are a
because-
number of ways in which it could be strengthened. For
Mhm.
sure, but I don't know the chances of
Yeah.
that. We're more worried about taking away the protections we already have.
Yes. Alice, did you have a question?
Can't hear you, Alice.
Are you muted maybe?
Unmute. Okay. About the issue of signing on to other bills as a co-filer. And I was just asking for input from the group because some people have approached me about giving, and this has been done before, more autonomy to medical providers like nurse practitioners and physician's assistant. I recently heard a commentator that said those practitioners of many types are leaving red states in droves because of our restrictive laws on the Dobbs Act. And this really affects Boone County as well as rural areas in our state. So I don't know the history of that issue in Missouri, and perhaps other people do. I know that we're weaker than other states in that area of giving nurse practitioners and PAs more latitude to practice without a physician.
Yeah, and I think that's a topic that I believe could have some bipartisan support. I heard about that several times at the doors, and it is, I think the place where we can find a lot of support is in those rural areas that don't have medical access for hours away, that if we could give a little bit more authority to those nurse practitioners, that could help a lot, and the physician assistants. I can't remember which is the one that doesn't have that kind of authority, but I also remember hearing from people that we're one of the states that are the farthest behind in that. So that's another thing that I think makes it something that might have some, some legs to stand on with people on the other side of the aisle. And as when I said to you that I'm not jumping out to file legislation, I haven't really even been in the shoes of a representative yet. It could be that January 15th, I'm a new woman and I'm filing bills left and right. But just my perspective from the outside, that is something after we talk that I do want to do a little bit more research on. And if you find some research, I hope you'll share it my way.
Okay, thank you.
Somebody asked about my email address. I don't have my new government email yet, but I will put, and I am still learning campaign laws. So many of you probably have my candidate email. So I will put this is my personal one that I'm likely to check more often because it's the one my mom has on me. So if that is a way to get a hold of me until I figure out what I'm going to guess my email is going to be Kathy.Steinhoff@Missouri House, but I don't know for sure. Oh, and David Mallory, did you have something to share?
Yes, one of them was going to ask you about how's the best way to contact you. So that was appreciate
Okay,
that. You just
all
answered
right.
that. And that was this will be it for now. And then once you're in office and you get that set up, there'll be something else. Appreciate that. I was going to comment. I commend you for the idea, the mindset of trying to work behind the scenes for the reason you said that it's probably going to be impossible for you to get nearly impossible for you to get your own bill out. Always heard for years, it's amazing what you can get done if you don't mind who gets the credit. So go for it. On the other hand, at the previous election, I think it was 2 years ago, like drawing a blank, I don't know who was, but one of their Democratic candidates was attacked by her Republican opponent because she never got anything passed. So if there's any way you can co-sponsor, I don't know anything about that, but I would caution you about being too much in the background.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're going the right direction to me. Is do what influence you can, but don't be too hesitant to
Mhm.
claim some credit so that people know you were involved. And that's
Yeah.
the only other question. The question I had was, you mentioned the bus tour earlier. Tell us about the bus tour. What is this all about? How long does it take? What is it? Just what is that?
I'm excited about that too. Well, first I want to recognize what you're saying. And that's what a lot of people have told me, that you want to make sure you file bills so that you can put it kind of on your resume. You want to get things passed. One of the luxuries I have as a representative, and I know some of them are like me, but many of them are not. I don't care if I don't get reelected. You know, I'm retired. I could just go retire. I really am willing to serve this community as long as they want me to serve and as long as they're happy with my service. And if I can, I'm somebody who works really hard. So if anybody were to question my ability to get things done, I can tell you, I'm going to have a long list of reasons what I've been spending my time on. But I hear what you're saying, and I will try to make sure. A lot of people have said at the training last week too, that we can always be co-sponsors. It's really easy to be a co-sponsor, and there can be unlimited co-sponsors. And if you go back home and you say something like, I sponsored such and such bill, you know, nobody's going to check on whether you were the co-sponsor or the sponsor. So there are ways that I can tack on to that pretty easily. But I hear your point. I hope I will have enough time down there that I will be able to have some bills of my own. But I also know if I'm lucky enough to be on that budget committee, I will be spending a lot of time on that budget committee. I think another thing that really made me think more about not bringing out too many bills, particularly like yesterday was the pre-filing day, was that when I heard from the staff down there and, you know, the whole how a bill becomes a law, Schoolhouse Rock didn't list everything in their little song. It's amazing how much staff have to be involved and all the people that has to go through. And they get, I think they said last year they had 7,000 bills introduced. And you've got attorneys that are looking through the language of all those bills. You've got them cross-checking it with all the other legislation. And yet in the end, like last year, wasn't it less than 100 things changed? That is a lot of work to put on that staff just for the idea that every representative wants to have a bill behind their name. I wish that we would spend more time working on the ones that are really important for Missouri instead of just having a long list of things. But again, I'm kind of digressing. So I'll talk about the tour. The tour starts next week. I'm probably not supposed to talk too much about it because they say that, you know, like there's a lot they haven't told us for safety purposes. But we get on these big buses. We have a highway patrol escort. David Tyson Smith was telling me how you just feel like the president because you come into town with your escort. And we're going to be touring most of the state things. Like we will probably be touring the University of Missouri, I would imagine. We look at a lot of like parks and dams and things like that. And when we go into these communities, they said one of the neat things is that the tradition is when the bus is driving, if the bus gets to your district as a representative, you stand up, grab the microphone, and you just tell people about your district. So we're just going to find out all about the other districts all around Missouri. We get a lot of, you know, just facts and find out like what's going right, what's going wrong. I would imagine we're going to hear about a lot of capital improvements that need to be made across the state, you know, statewide in certain areas. And then we get to eat in all the little cute restaurants all around the state. So it's going to be fun. It's 5 days now. Now, it used to be 2 weeks long. During COVID, they stopped having it. So I want to say it was last year. I'm getting my COVID years confused. I want to say it was last year they decided to have it it must have been a year ago this past summer. They decided to have it in the summer instead of in December. And when they did that, they were then able to tour a lot of different places that were not accessible during the winter months. So we're going to be the first class that does a winter 1 week tour and a summer 1 week tour. So in June, we will do another week's worth of traveling around the state to see things.
So it's only for new representatives?
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's funny because even Deb Lavender was saying how she didn't get to go on. I think it's a relatively new thing. So Deb Lavender never got to go on one, and she's kind of technically a freshman. So she's trying to get her way into this tour. And she said, well, they told me no, and then so-and-so told me yes. Because it's a really cool experience. Everybody that has talked to me about the tour has said, don't miss the tour. It's one of the best things. I don't see any more hands up.
Sue Tillman just raised hers.
Oh, okay, Sue.
I was just gonna say, I think also the other thing is it turns out there tends to be some bonding done.
Oh, yes.
And that I think can be key, because as freshmen, you don't necessarily have much power, but with trying to get it so that you have some camaraderie behind the scenes with your group, since it's so divisive otherwise, is very important.
Yes, so I'm glad you said that. You're exactly right. The camaraderie is important. Matter of fact, one of the staff members was sharing with me that one of the bus tours, which was really close around the height of the pandemic, and people were, I guess it was at the beginning of the pandemic, because some people were really masked and some people were not. So they had two buses. One was a masked bus and one was people who didn't want to wear a mask. And they said, you can imagine the partisanship that happened on those buses, and it didn't help with that camaraderie.
Oh.
Pam, did you have a question?
I think you know your room number, your office room number. Is that correct?
I do. And I was so excited that it's the same as my classroom number.
Oh.
So I was in 135 at Hickman High School, and in the Capitol, I'll be at 135 BA. And it's very easy to find, because when you come into the Capitol and you turn to the right, it's the first office on the left.
Okay.
So I'm very easy to find. I hope you all will come visit me.
This may seem like a little too personal or something, but I think you might have taught my son in high school, or at West. So tell me what your maiden name was.
Zimmerman.
Okay.
And I was only at West 1 year. And it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was for when he was in school, because he's 51 now.
Oh, wow. There was a time when I really remembered all the kids' names. But I'm 57 years old now, and I'm a 57-year-old with a mind of an 85-year-old is what I keep thinking, because I think all those names somehow ate away at some of my brain power.
Yeah, okay. Well, I may have gotten the years.
I hope you'll let me know if you find that out.
Okay.
Okay. Herb, did you have a question as well?
Quick comment. I bristled when you said you didn't care whether you were reelected. I appreciate the sentiment that you will not bend your practice to getting reelected. You're going to work on substance. But I hope that you enjoy some satisfaction in this job, and that you are willing to continue, and that everybody in the legislature knows that, because that predicts more effectiveness, and that you will in fact be willing to go on long enough where the greater influence that comes from known experience brings benefit in what you can do after the first term. So we look forward to your representing Columbia for several years, and not just for one term.
Yeah, Kathy, just quickly, I would also just not say that with other crowds.
Yes, don't say it.
Winifred, did you have a question? And you're muted.
We're still not able to hear you, Win. I'm sorry. I don't know. Is your microphone on?
I wanted to second Herb's comments. I'm very pleased to hear the things you are enthusiastic about and the background that you're a teacher, as I was many, many, many years ago. I have not heard anything about your concern about the environment, about climate change. I know our state has been woefully derelict in dealing with this, and I think probably one of the best things you can do is to fight bills that would harm the environment. We need our air and water clean. And I think that's something that hopefully many Republicans would join in with also. But we know that last year there were a number of bills that were detrimental to the environment, and I anticipate more. So I just didn't want to let this session go without making you aware that many of us share those concerns.
You're exactly right. And I'm glad you brought that up. That was the one topic that when I was on the doors, hopefully you don't get upset when I say this, it surprised me how many people that was their number one topic. I mean, my husband's a physics teacher. Yeah, you know, we believe in science in this house, and we see that there are problems that have been that full-heartedly are because of our actions as humans on this planet. And that if we don't change course on that, then we're not going to have humans on this planet. I totally support that. Matter of fact, halfway through my campaign on my website, I didn't have anything about climate change until I started hitting the doors and realizing what a big deal it was. Started doing a little more research on it. And I just wanted people to know that I was committed to that as well. So it's another one of those areas that I might need your help as far as education goes. But
thank you.
Definitely know that I'll be in your corner, and don't hesitate again to reach out to me if there's something that you think I should know. Don't just assume, oh, Kathy probably already knows this. If it's something that you had a half-second thought, wondering if I knew about it, I hope you all will take the time to just shoot me a quick email and let me know. And there's probably a good chance that I'll reach back and I'll say, can we have some coffee? Because I need to know more.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right. I think I'm seeing we're after 1 o'clock now. Do we have any other things that really need to be brought to Kathy's attention or questions for her before we say thank you so much to her? Not seeing the other hands now. So Kathy, appreciate so much you coming and speaking to us, and we look forward to whatever we can do to help you over the next couple of years. So again, let's make it reciprocal. If there's something we can do as Boone County people, let us know. Please just reach out to any one of us and Muleskinners, and we can help pass that word on. So thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you. And thank you for all the work that you all do. I appreciate it.
I want to tell you that 2 weeks from today, Brian Colby of the Missouri Budget Project will be speaking with us. So you might want to attend.
I definitely might.
Have you reached